How can one up the stakes? I, the agent of madness, looked at Cherry's drab life with a peculiar interest. I don't know exactly why I'm doing it, I'm sure, but if I do it will be something worth doing. Something that no other could have done and yet would make my name famous forever. And there's only one way to find out. I am no enemy of Cherry's. She is not even an acquaintance. I think she's quite young, pretty though rather too thin, and brave. Yet I am Destiny's agent sent to ruffle up her world. To create her to be what she is meant to be. If you've noticed from the last story, I am actually trying to help Cherry by portraying the role of Rickeliza. Well, anyhow, let us focus on the main point of this whole video. Raising the stakes in a story. Will this make me too brutal? Are we just torturing Cherry Klatch's life? No, I am simply setting her first story she will never forget for the rest of her life. I volunteered to do this because I have read through the creator's past works, and to be honest, she gets too attached to her characters and worlds. She barely harms them. They are all alive when the story ends. I think she needs characters who will be murdered, tortured, humiliated, degraded, made to suffer every conceivable kind of pain and horror. This is not a game or a joke, or even torture. It is real, exciting fiction. The audience may laugh, but they need to scream, cry, gasp, faint, or throw up as well. Creator creates, but madness destroys. So let us begin. Previously, Cherry was caught in a sticky situation. While boarding a ship on her way to Nubina, one of the passengers was afflicted by an unknown curse. This caused the other passengers in the ship to harbor distrust to the mages. In order to avoid suspicion, Cherry must find a way to deal with the unknown. What was supposed to be a personal quest turned into a journey of discovery about magic in the real world. Just when Cherry could figure out what was happening, Daz the green-haired assassin chucked an axe to the sick man, preventing it from further casting erratic magic. So all that is what we have. Anything I'll say here will be canon. Let me grab my notes for the plot and all, and let us begin. Now the two mages are scrambling to contain the sick man, now a dying man's wounds. Daz's axe struck a portion of his abdomen and he lost much blood. The sick man should have been dead, but the foreign magic that's gripping into him is preventing him from dying. He's still breathing, though slowly. Daz has taken off his shirt and tied it around the wound, but he can't stop the bleeding. His face looks pale and drawn. He's sweating profusely. Cherry approaches him and asks if she can do anything. "You're a mage?" he says. "Yes," she replies. He shakes his head and then whispers, "I'm sorry for the trouble." He wanted to speak more, but he falls unconscious. Savantras, the veiled lady, is currently helping the crew maneuver the ship. She closed her eyes and whistled by the ship's edge, the wind carrying away the scent of death. A moment later, she heard the beating of wings. A white bird with brown streaks landed on the deck near her. It looked like a hawk. Its feathers were matted and dirty. She raised her hand towards the bird and whispered unto it a message. The bird began to fly, carrying a long ribbon about the size of a finger. Microscopic writing was etched on its surface. Then the beast started its task and took off. She was sending a message to a group of acolytes who worshipped the temple of Peri Tagore. The message said, "I found her, and them. We who are bound by fate. Sherry should lead me to the ghost of Belvedere, but before I could even do that, I must tend to her own troubled dreams. She stinks of it. I couldn't even sleep due to her aura." Next, we have Vilperato the Bard. He is helping one of the sailors with their chores on deck, cleaning up the mess caused by the rain that plagued only their ship, and not the areas around them. Vilk had just finished singing a song when he felt a memory arising from within him. It was of a time when he was young. He was playing with his friends in a forest. Where are they now, and are they still in the dark? He shook his head and focused on his present life. There is no darkness in this world. He is no longer a darkspawn, but rather a man who could heal minor ailments with his voice. The bard was in the middle of a song when he saw the shadow of a woman in the corner of the room. It was Cherry Klatch. He stopped mid-song and stared at her. Her hair was disheveled and her eyes were red. She was crying. He was stunned by her question. "Could you please help us close his wound? Your unskilled magic may be our choice now." He was going to answer, but as he was staring at her, she turned and ran out of the cabin. Could Cherry be the key to help him forget his past? Or maybe she could teach him more magic. He doesn't want to end up in some boring academy, but maybe he could learn a new thing or two to help him in his performances. Cherry Klatch ran down the steps to the cabin with Vilperato the Bard trailing after her. She led him to the sick man and convinced him to sing. Her tears betrayed her, for her life was suddenly too difficult and complicated. Vilk sang a healing spell for the sick man. He sang in an archaic language, which made Cherry grew a small hint of suspicion for him. However, she must focus on the matter at hand. When the sick man was healed, the poor mage passed out on her own bed to catch a few hours of sleep. She wasn't able to dream well to enter that other dimension. She wasn't able to receive new dreams from the otherworlders. All was as silent as still water in pure darkness. When she woke up, they were already close to Nubina. Shuri gathered her things, pausing at the sight of her journal. She may need to postpone her personal quest, but at least she could utilize all this helping other people thing to further her magical studies. Oh, she was supposed to return home, a newly graduated mage who was ready to claim the role of court mage. Now, she's just a novice scrambling to figure everything out on her own. She picked up the book and put it in her bag, then left the ship to find Vilk. Vilk Barada the Bard was sitting on a bench on deck, looking over the side. He was thinking about the events of the last day. The old man, Zesku, was relieved to see the shores of Nubina. Now that he's home, he has nothing to lose and everything to gain if he takes an active part in this sudden event. As soon as he's ashore, he'll head straight to the Duke and tell him of all that has happened. He will also inform the king of what he knows and let them decide how they should proceed from there. He might even try to convince them to send a force to arrange an official judging circle for Cherry Cottage. The entire village must discuss about her magic and decide if they want her in there or somewhere else. Maybe send her to the temple with the acolytes of Perry Tagore. Nubina has suffering too much, they need not more suffering. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Zesku verbalized his thoughts, repeating his favorite phrase. He looked around and saw no one nearby. He stood and walked towards the stern of the boat. He had something important to do and he needed privacy to do it. He heard footsteps behind him and turned around. It was Rikaliza. He smiled and nodded his head. You've calmed the storm for now. Thank you for being with Miss Kladich. Going to Daz, he was just in his bed, watching both Cherry Kladich and the sick man sleep. This was not in his plans, but in some funny way, it further strengthened his resolve. He was going to help Cherry deal with the sick man. He had no idea where his path would lead him next, but with their forged friendship, he'll use this to find the rumored last son of the Tornia clan. The assassins of Minorud hired him to keep a close watch to a certain Kren Camille. However, this task was not going to be easy, for Kren is close to Idalion, the heir of Nubina. One way to ensure that this Kren is truly a Tornia is to present him to the monks of Perry Tagore. Daz must convince Cherry to seek the monks for help. That is easy, but in the future, will he be able to murder her very own childhood friend? Close friends, close enemies. Rikaliza sat down on the bench beside Zesku and stared out at the sea. She was deep in thought. She didn't want to think about the past, the present, or the future. She wanted only to enjoy the moment. She was happy to be out again, away from the city. She was free of her responsibilities and obligations. Except for Cherry. She must watch over her at the same time, make her life more difficult. Was it really true that Cherry Claddoc's powers were descended from Cecil Stanley? The very woman who has caused her entire family to live such short lives. Precious lives that never live past 30. Rikaliza was 10 years away from that same fate. However, if she could reach into Cecil Stanley through Cherry, maybe she could reverse all this. Maybe she could break the bonds of death from her lineage and live longer than her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmothers. On a less gloomy note, Cherry was said to have manifested strange new powers. She could penetrate into strange new worlds through her dreams. Headmaster Janice mentioned that these new powers are tethered to 4 individuals. Will they know of a cure for her ailment as well? Or perhaps she could stop struggling for more years and prepare for her spirit's path. Would it be nice for her soul to end up in that other world? That could be one way to utilize Cherry to her own advantage. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, Zesku said to himself. And I am the same, Rikaliza added. The small port of the island of Nubina was finally clear in front of them. The ship slowed its speed and made ready to dock. Zesku and Rikaliza stood up and walked towards the bow. The 7 people in the ship shared a common feeling. The moment they'll disembark from the ship, they'll have to face something unknown. A new chapter in their lives, with no idea of what it holds. So, that's it. I hope that upped the stakes a bit. Oh, did I mention that the sick man on deck isn't the only sick man in the island? Magical afflictions shall manifest in other people. The island shall also face a seafood poisoning incident. Oh, and how about cannibalistic pirates? Oh yes, there is a lot to do. I am finished. I hoped you enjoyed this story. Please leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts. Thank you for reading. You are awesome.